Hi guys, we'll be starting short. Okay, hi guys, good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
Wonderful. It is great to have you guys with us this evening. Also wonderful to see the numbers. Welcome to day 3. Don't mind what the graphic on there says. It's not day 1, it's day 3 of MedSkool KickOff 2022 in partnership with the Jamaica Medical Students Association, the Jamaica Dental Students Association, the University of the West Indies Surgical Society, and the Cave Hill Medical Students Association. I am Devon Malcolm Brewster, Managing Director of Hyper Academics Jamaica Limited, organizing this event yet another week, and we are happy to have you. Today promises to be a riveting day, a wonderful time where we will have some fruitful discussions that will get you set and ready to conquer this semester. This is also the penultimate session. We have just one more to go. Gonna ask guys that I sent the YouTube link in the chat. I cannot access it to send via my phone. So if someone could just send it in the group
Devon,
to those who.
Devon, I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it, Devon.
Wonderful. Great. So what do we have in store for you today? We're gonna start first of all with a motivational aspect for about 15 minutes where we talk about how do I know I belong here. We know that many of us are coming from different backgrounds. Some of us are coming straight out of high school. Some of us are coming after having done a year or even more at SciTech. Some of us have had whole degrees at Science and Technology, or even other degrees at the Faculty of Medical Sciences. And we're starting this new journey, and we have the question, how do I know I belong here? We went through week 1, and we're already overwhelmed. We need some encouragement. Well, this is the right place to be. And we have with us this evening Akili, who comes from the Cave Hill Medical Students Association, who will join me and lead us in a discussion on how to know, or how do I know I belong here. And then after that, we will have representatives from the University of the West Indies Surgical Society introducing us to some basic concepts in locomotor system, and then we will end this evening's session with a sort of wrap session on how best to approach the courses for semester 1, year 1, and that will be it for MedSkool Kickoff today. So without further ado, let us just proceed. I want you to know, and let me just get it so you can see, so you're not lying. Right, we are actually giving away this book today, which is oh my god, the blur is kind of blurring it out, but it's a brand new copy of the Atlas of Human Anatomy by Netters, and we know that this is the Anatomy Bible. Well, no, the Bible is your last, and this is the Sankey. So we'll be giving that out today, so you'll find out how you can get your hands on it very soon. So it's the seventh. What is it? Yeah, it's the 7th edition. I don't even know what edition is out now, but I know when I got it, because we had some additional copies we were selling at the time. That was the most recent copy, the most recent edition. So we have that to give out. So great. Without further ado, let us welcome Miss Akili Campbell from the Cable Medical Students Association. Akili, welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you.
Yes, man. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty fine myself. This thing disturbed my Sunday evening sleep, but I am pretty fine otherwise. So, what do you have for us this
Okay.
evening?
Well, I won't dilly dally. Um, like Devon said, my name is Akili Campbell. I am actually vice president of the MSA here at KFIL. Um, I'm 20 and I'm a third year medical student, so I'll actually be going into the hospital in November. And let me just get right into it then. How did I know that I belong here? I think this is kind of a tricky question, actually. Um, Not everyone would be able to answer it as soon as they join. Maybe some people still can't answer why. But for me, I'll give a generic answer first. I always enjoyed bio when I went to secondary school, learning about the body, things like that. And then, so the idea of pathologies and diagnostics and how to actually fix people is quite exciting to me. But then I also think that everyone should have their own reason besides that generic answer. For me, it was, seeing my grandmother in the hospital, how nurses and doctors treated her. And I personally thought that I could add value to the healthcare system. So that is my reason. But like I said, everyone is going to have their own. I also think that shadowing and volunteering in hospitals, clinics helped me fall in love with the idea of patient care, the relationship, surgery. Oh my gosh. But why did I decide to go out of the country to study? I think for me, I wanted that experience of living on my own, building character. I mainly wanted to learn how to depend on myself, and through this, I learned how to comfort myself in times of need, what type of person I am, what type of support I need, what type of friends do I make. They always say that's a reflection of yourself. So, all of this I found to be fulfilling in a sense. So, those small pockets of, hey, you're doing a good job, that's what I hang on to. And I think those are my aha moments in med school where I'm like, okay, this is really where I think I need to be. But like I said, I think there are more of those moments to come, and you won't know for sure. I don't think anybody would really ever know for sure. You just have to really hang on to those moments, be persistent, and rally on. But
So I have a question for you, Akili. You say you have not entered the clinical space as yet, right? So you started medical school in the pandemic, correct?
I did, I did. So
How
my
do you
first 2 years were online.
how do you feel about that?
Well, I think they call us what, pandemic doctors.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was definitely rough. It was hard to stay motivated, I definitely say, because it's not like we're in class, it's not like we're getting that experience of being face to face, knowing our classmates, really getting to know our lecturers, being in the labs and stuff. But for me, it was still something to get to know about the things that we really have the privilege to know.
Right.
So, like I said, I really do hang on to that. I find it extremely exciting. And then it did help too that I decided not to stay in Trinidad to learn my stuff online. I decided to come up to Barbados. And so, of course, there are other people who were like minded and did the same. and of course the Bayesians and stuff. So it really helped to have that community of people who are going through the same thing I was. Now, of course, we're face to face, so it's a lot more exciting.
Right.
Uh, yeah, that we get that college experience, that real med school experience.
Right.
So,
I want to focus a little bit on something that you mentioned briefly, which is the pandemic doctor business.
mhm.
So it's something that I'm a bit passionate about. At my oath ceremony, when I addressed my class for the last time as class president, my closing reflection was on this concept of pandemic doctor. What do you feel about the being classified as a pandemic doctor?
I think it's on. I think I personally don't feel any type of way about it. I mean, it's kind of jokey to me.
Mm.
How you could take away 5 years of studying and cram it down into a pandemic doctor? Well, okay, whatever. That's
So
how I feel
you're
about
like
it.
it's neither here or there. You're not gonna make
To
that.
me, no, I'm not gonna allow that to upset me
Mm,
because at the end of the day, I'm gonna have doctor in front of my last name.
mm.
So I don't think any of us should allow that to deter us or make us feel like our degrees are less than because we had a short online moment.
Right, and that's exactly how I feel. I think basically what we should do is not necessarily take it to heart, and be consumed by trying to not
Absolutely.
be a pandemic doctor, but rather I think it represents us overcoming a major challenge of surviving in
Exactly.
an environment with such limitations, and yet still the university has found it fit and will find it fit to deem us qualified to go into the world and be life changers, life savers, and be doctors, and so I think the incoming class now I think they would still sort of be considered, in the pandemic era, transitioning into the post-pandemic era. But I really don't think everything is going to be exactly as it was pre-pandemic, and so
Definitely not.
basically it is still, and it will be a sort of learning experience, a readjusting experience, especially for example those who did degrees before in the pre-pandemic era and that kind of stuff. We have to readjust to face to face and that kind of stuff. We have to just be cognizant that just as it was before the pandemic, it is for us now. You have to put your best foot forward and just go forth and conquer.
And then it's how many people can really say that they've gone through a pandemic. People are playing like, this is something easy, like somehow we had it easier because we were online, but
Right.
take into consideration mental health, things of that nature, how difficult it was, like I said, to keep yourself motivated because you had to do that literally yourself. You know what I
Right.
mean? I didn't know people from my class for a good while, and it's harder to make friends. It's harder to, for me at least, to learn online, to sit down in front of a laptop for X amount of time
Right.
and you find different resources, things like that, not knowing what your lectures look like. So there's a lot of things that you have to that you have to take into consideration
Hmm.
during this time that we were online in the pandemic.
Right.
So
And I
go ahead
noticed
and describe it.
you mentioned something which basically what I was going to ask next with regards to friends. We know that in the pandemic era, for those of you who started medical school in the pandemic, making friends was a little different than it would have been before, where you it's virtual friends and all that kind of stuff. I want to know how important you think it is for friends in developing that sense of belonging to the profession that you're training for, making you feel like, I deserve to be here. How important do you think friendship is to that?
Extremely. I really think it is extremely important.
Mm.
To find once you get through med school, you
And then
already know that you're in a place that's where there are persons that think alike. You know what I mean? So filtering down to that to make friends, then it's like you have people who think just like you, who experiencing the same things like you, and then remember the length of your degree too. These are the people who are going to carry you through, motivate you. These are the people you're going to form study groups with, even it might be your dating pool. You know what I mean? So they're very important, in my opinion. My friends have saved me from failing, they've saved me from depressive episodes, things like that. So I think they form a great support system through this time, which you definitely need in a degree like medicine.
right, so you would say that you would highly recommend that students not
Reach
couple
out.
up, but start putting themselves in groups as soon
Yes,
as possible.
definitely. As
Yeah,
soon as possible.
I
Just
agree.
message somebody. If you don't know how, just, I don't know, hey, did you catch what happened in that lecture? So,
Right.
play it slick.
Yeah.
Yes,
Slide into some DMs. That's how you guys have to do it,
exactly.
right?
That's really what to do.
Yes. But that's fun. So what about those students who are coming in, not coming straight from high school, not coming straight from some sort of previous degree. They may have gone out into the world of work. They are not necessarily, they feel kind of out of touch with the academic space. What would you say to them, in terms of, now that they're coming back into academia, they might feel a bit out of space. What would you say to those persons?
Hmm. I actually think that maybe those persons might have an edge just because they might have had a broader perspective. They went out into the world, etc. So they might have an idea of what people may be like, but I must still hang on the answer of meeting people, getting that support system, but really getting back into academia from work. I think that transition might be slightly easier for you for those persons. So
I tend to agree. In fact, when I was in first year, I had a conversation with my deputy dean at the time, and she was saying that her experience has shown her that the students who they, after high school, they went out and worked, or they did another degree and they ended up in some other field. They went into work rather than coming straight into medical school. She found that not necessarily a situation where they do better academically.
mhm,
That was not necessarily what was being assessed. So you cannot really say whether you're gonna do better because you just came from high school or not. But in terms of coping,
yes,
she found that they were better able to cope with the pressures of medical school, because trust me, students, medical school is gonna squeeze you, and dental school is gonna hold you, like a mop. Gonna hold you, it's gonna squeeze you, and it's gonna turn, it's gonna wring you, and all that's gonna matter is what you're made of. You see, like when you
yeah,
squeeze them up, the water fall into the pail, is what you're made of. And the unfortunate reality is that many people are not strong enough to withstand the pressures. And so we go back to the whole idea of forming bonds, forming relationship with fellow students to help support you through this challenging time. And in addition to that, making use of the avenues to get your mental health, to get it in check, to keep it in check, and if it is that it needs to literally be checked, to access the mental health services offered free of cost by the various campuses, and that kind of stuff.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I agree with what you said. I think that these people probably have better coping mechanisms. I know, like I said, for me, I wanted to learn that about myself, and so that's why I decided not to stay home. But I think you could do that even if you decided to, stay in Jamaica, stay in Barbados, stay in Trinidad, wherever you're at.
Mm.
Um, through this degree, this is definitely the right degree to learn about yourself, how you
Right.
will, how
But
you acting under pressure.
I have a semi personal question for you, Akili.
Okay.
As what? You're going to year three, correct? So you've done two
Yeah,
years already. Akili, have
correct.
you
Two.
ever felt like giving up?
Absolutely. I would say every semester,
Tell us about
but
that.
this is
Tell us
just,
about that.
so I would definitely say yes, I'm not gonna hide it. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who feel the exact same way that I do. Um, but it builds character to know that, okay, Kili, look, 2 years in already, what's three more? You know what I mean? I reached so far. Even if you made it, you just made it in, that means something. Hang on to that. You could tell people, I am a med student, I am a dental student. That means something. You see, this whole idea of being delusional, listen, it works. It does. It does. You have to find ways to self-motivate, to to pick up yourself, to realize that one little exam, maybe failing a course or two, I don't know what it is, that does not define you. At the end of the day, you keep going, you will get to where you want to go. So, yeah.
I agree completely. And trust me, I have had mornings where, I wake up, I can't get out of my bed because I just lack the motivation. I'm like, you
Yes,
know,
I'm sure you'll be able to tell us too.
I trust me, I haven't felt like giving up. I have given up, and
Really.
then again, and guys, trust me, we are not over exaggerating. You'd realize for every situation we're coming back to the whole idea of groups and friends, because it's really my friends who kept me afloat at my lowest hour.
Yeah.
And the truth is that, I mean, don't make no mistake, med school may not even be the biggest pressure that you might face, and dental school may not be the biggest pressure you might face over the next 5 years. Life events might happen. Unfortunately, a family member might die, a close family member might die. There might be some kind of natural disaster. When I started medical school, 2 weeks into medical school, Hurricane Maria devastated my country in Dominica. I had no idea whether my family were dead or alive for an entire week. I started with a major life event that I really felt like I needed to just stop and find some way, swim, jump on a boat, go on a broomstick, some way to get to Dominica, because medical school wasn't it, but I had to go on. So there might be a natural disaster. Sometimes we have a financial plan at the beginning, and somewhere along the line something happens and the financial plan falls through. I know someone whose uncle was supporting him, and then his uncle fell sick and had to get Medicare in the United States, no insurance. So United States medical expenses is very high, and his uncle could not support him anymore. What could he do? He could have just, and he wanted to. That's what he felt to do. Just give up. And as friends, we motivated him to push still. Let us see what avenues we can explore. And today he's a medical doctor. So you have to really. I like how Khalil puts it. Plan for the speed bumps on the journey and just keep pressing. I don't like speed bumps. For those of you on Mona, you know that Ring Road have whole heap of speed bump, and I just feel like speed bumps are stumbling blocks in my way. Like, I want to just speed, I want to get to where I want to go, and they just in my way. But sometimes we need these experiences to humble us and remind us that, yes, we are here because we deserve to be here. Yes, we are here because we have the right CAPE grades. Yes, we are here because of XYZ. But in our own strength, in our own power, we cannot do it on our own. And whether it is you believe in a superior being, whatever your belief system is, you have to understand that medical school and dental school is not to be attempted on your own. All
Yeah.
right.
And make no mistake though, like it's not really, it is friends play a big role, family, yes, too, but I really do want to stress on the fact that you and only you, my mother like to say, you're born by yourself, you'll die by yourself. You have to find ways to pull yourself through. Not every time your friend's gonna be there for you. If it is you like to go to the gym, I know myself, I love an outing, right?
Mm.
I like to go a little lunch, a little party here and there. So I make time for the things that I like to do so that I can keep myself sane.
Right, right, for sure, for sure. Okay, so do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
I would like to say that MBBS dentistry, whatever it is you're doing, that is not that is not in totality who you are. It is a piece of who you are. And because of that, you have to realize that, okay, I cannot let this degree rule me, rule my life. You are ruling this degree. You are the one who's supposed to be conquering. You are the one who's supposed to take it by the horns. So you find yourself slipping, find a way to rally through, be it your friends, those coping mechanisms. Hang on to that. What I'd like
Very
to say.
well.
Don't
Thank you
sit down
so
for too
much,
long.
Akili, for joining us in this discussion. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in that white coat, Dr. Akili Campbell, coming up right soon. Yes, coming to a hospital near you. But thank you so much.
Thanks
And
for having me.
every blessing. All right.
Bye, guys.
Yes, bye bye. Okay, wonderful. Guys, what you thought about this? Tell me what you thought about that. Did we bore you? Was Achilles so uninspirational? I know it wasn't because I personally, I mean, I was asking questions, but I was personally motivated by her analysis. Yeah, definitely. Trust me, it's important to just be clear and transparent. To paint medical and dental school as a glitter of gold, um, it would be to lie to you. It would be to lie to you, and then you come in with all these expectations, and then there's increased risk for morbidity and mortality. To be quite honest, it's better when we're just honest about what everything is, and how it is, but also be a testament to you that you see, Achille could make it to third year, so that means it's possible. Mark Davis, Jeremiah Baker could make it to second year, so that means it's possible. I could graduate, well, about to graduate, that means it's possible for you. Okay, very well. So, without further ado, and I'm gonna hand over to Mark Davis, who's president of the MBBS class of 2026 here at Mona, and also is he will tell you exactly what he is in US. Me no remember. Who will take you guys through. We're making a little change, by the way. We're going to do the wrap session discussing the courses. All right, so bring on the guys, Simon, Mark, etc. You just open your mics. We're gonna discuss each course, and have a little advice session with you guys, and then we will end with the introduction to locomotor system by the University of the West Indies Surgical Society. So I will be somewhere in the background. You may or may not see me again, but all the best. And as soon as they're done with the course advising, they will just transition right into the introduction to locomotor system. So enjoy. If you're enjoying this so far, just put an emoji in the chat, man. We want to know that you're here. The chat kind of daddy. The same people commenting all the time. Let us know that you're here, and that you're awake, and that you're paying attention, and that you're appreciating what has been offered so far. So, Mark, Simon, guys, you all can come on.
Thank you, Devon. Simon, you want to start? And guys, I love interaction, right? So you can talk to me in the chat because I'm needy, guys. I'm very needy. So you can talk to me.
Red flag.
Let me just share my screen.
Mark, before I start, I had actually put together a little something just now for FET. So when you get there, just talk, and then afterwards I'm going to drop that.
Okay, that's perfect.
Sure, Simon will be conducting and letting us know when to speak.
All right, hi guys. Let me put in my AirPods so you guys can hear me a bit better. So welcome guys, welcome to year 1, semester 1. I hope you guys are all excited to start med school because I was very excited when I started years ago. I'm a third year medical student. My name is Simon Scully. I'm a third year medical student. And I'm just glad to be here to give you guys a little introduction on first year. So overall, you guys know this is a 5-year degree. And if you want the 5 years to run smoothly, basically, you must master the fundamental concepts from early. And what does starting early mean? It means sometimes pre-reading before lectures. It means doing practice questions right after completing a topic. It means not leaving everything a week before exams. You'll quickly come to realize that it's impossible to do it all if you start late. So that's one of the first things I wanted to let you guys know. So what I used to do in med school a lot in my first year was to pre-read a lot of the lectures that I thought would be challenging the next day. And after the lecture, I would then make a 1-page summary highlighting the most important concepts from that lecture. Then a week before the exam, I had like a page to go through for 60 plus lectures in total, 1 page for every lecture just because of my work ethic throughout the semester, while some people had to go through 40 plus lectures from scratch. So that's why it's very important to start early. You need to make a plan from early and decide what kind of student you want to be. Everyone studies differently as well. So what worked for me might not work for you. I'm a student that personally learns by understanding everything in a stepwise sequence. I love to draw tree diagrams, for example. And when you're learning about, for example, blood, you have to break it down into its components. For example, blood is made up of cells and plasma. And of the cellular component, you can break that down further into red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And in the plasma side, you can break it down into water, plasma proteins, hormones, gases, etc. A lot of students use active recall to study, for example, constantly quizzing yourself every day. But the important thing is there are lots of things you can do, and you guys should really try and explore that as early as possible and look at the different options. So let's jump right into it with the first course. So the musculoskeletal system. Mark, you want to say something about this first?
Sure. You moving the screen?
Oh, it did not change. Hold on. I changed it, but it didn't change. So let me reshare from scratch. Can you guys see now?
Right, I'm seeing it now.
Perfect.
So, right, musculoskeletal system. Right, guys? This is my first look, right? So I did anatomy as my degree for basic medical sciences before getting into MBBS. Now, as you can see, musculoskeletal system is a 3-credit course. 3 credits might sound like little bit or a little. However, you know that anatomy is extensive. Have you guys had that first lecture with Barnett yet, where he just shows you all the osteology and he rambles on for like 3 hours? Did he do that on Friday? Or you only did the cranium?
Yeah, only Dr. Thomas did the cranium.
Oh, that's one thing, right? So my advice is that anatomy can seem daunting or a whole lot, right? But you want to remember that You also have other courses to pay attention to, like FDT. So what I'd like to use is the word balance. Now, in terms of anatomy, you want to remember your muscle table, right? When I started anatomy, right, I used the muscle table to try and get, you know, just a quick grasp of all those key things that they'll be asking me about in the upper limb, right? So, you know, you want to learn about your pectoralis major and all those muscles, right? High yield, you want to attend your US sessions, right? As well as your tutorial sessions, right? And I'd say that for two reasons. You guys will have a hybrid approach in terms of your exam assessment for musculoskeletal system. And I know that your mid-semester should be online. However, I believe that your final exams will entail your spotters, right? And spotters exam now, that's the most traumatizing exam I've ever done in my life, right? Especially the first time I did it. For those of you who don't know how spotters work, is that spotters is a course, is an exam where they'd have like 100 questions, but they divide it into stations, 25 stations, right? 4 questions per station. And you can start at any station, right? So they spread those of you in the group right around the lab, and you'd start at the station. And once you begin, you have 2 minutes per station, right? And you have 4 questions to answer. So essentially that's 30 seconds per question, guys, right? Once it is that the bell goes off, right, you're gonna have to move from that station and you can't go back, right? And they put the options on the table as normally A to P. And yes, I didn't say A, B, C, D. A all the way to P, right? So you can imagine you can't touch the specimen there either, right? You only can look, orientate yourself, and answer the questions that they're asking you. And you have to do 4 questions in 2 minutes. High pressure situation, guys, right? So you really want to go to your tutorial sessions, right? As well as go to your US lectures where you can get to see these specimens and these high yield topics up close and personal, right? And you get used to it so that when you get into this sort of exam situation, you can identify the stuff from early, right? You want to also use your Socrative quizzes, right? Dr. Francis will give you guys Socrative quizzes. I implore you, maybe after you do the topic, you study the topic, I implore you to use these quizzes to test your knowledge on what you actually remember. And when you get the question, if you do get the question, and I'm telling you, you will get some wrong because I still get questions wrong, right? In anatomy. And when you get the question wrong, the Socrative quiz is really helpful because when you get it wrong, it gives you the correct answer as well as a detailed explanation on how you arrive at that answer, right? So it might remind you about other topics that you had forgotten or other concepts, right? So in terms of your resources now, in terms of your books, so if you are already exposed to anatomy, right? Because I know some students would have done degrees or whatnot, right? Lasts will be the Bible for you. However, I personally, I'm not someone that reads the last religiously, right? Because if you're new to the content, last might seem a bit overwhelming for you. Last has all the information you need, yes, but when it's asking you about, it's gonna use all these terms, you're gonna find yourself looking up a lot of the stuff, line per line, and it's gonna take up a lot of your time, right? So the Vishram Singh's right there, the Vishram Singh book there, that's a good book you can use to help you, right? It's not as detailed or daunting as the last anatomy. I know Simon likes that book, as well as you can use there's an app there, you can see it on the screen, 3D anatomy. You could use that app. Simon personally used that app to when he was teaching us in US, right? So you just want to remember these key things. Don't try and spend all your time on anatomy. Let me just say that because you do have FDT, which has a lot as well. But when it comes to anatomy, you want to make sure you understand the basic concepts in terms of, especially for locomotor. Once you study a muscle, you want to understand its origin, its insertion, its blood supply, it's nerve supply, right? And then lymphatics to a lesser extent, right? I personally don't take this advice, guys. I personally don't always, you know, study lymphatics, but you should, right? And you want to know its function, but I like to tell people, once you remember that a muscle, right, it always pulls towards its origin. Even if you don't remember the exact word at the time, what that muscle is doing, you can imagine it once it is that you understand the origin and the insertion, right? And then you want to learn about relations, right? So what is lateral to, what is medial to, and you know, you need to understand these terms in terms of your anatomical terminology. And Brandon and Nathaniel will touch on that information a little bit more after we go through all of this, right, to help you guys. So you want to try and think about anatomy in a logical way, right, step by step, to help you understand and what it is that you can do that. And remember, you know, guys, anatomy is not changing. It's not changing, right? So it's really repetition that will help you to get good at anatomy, right? Some of you might get it off the bat just because, you know, you're just highly excited and just love it like that. Others you might find it overwhelming. But if you do find it overwhelming, do not leave out your muscle table. I'm telling you, right? And as well as, I must say lower limb, just before I ask anybody else to speak, I must say lower limb, guys, right? What tends to happen with how the semester is organized, lower limb always seems to get rushed because they start lower limb at a later time down in the semester. But what I wanted to think about is that a lot of the stuff that you're learning upper limb can be applied in terms of concept, right, to the lower limb, right? And once it is that you keep that open mind, lower limb can be very decent for you, let me say. And you can start reading ahead. I definitely would advise you guys, when you see professors, maybe like doctors like Dr. Barnett, you want to pre-read for that lecture, right? Because if you go into that lecture without, or even your tutorials, if you want to get the most out of your tutorials, you want to pre-read something so you can go to your tutorials and you can make the links in terms of when you're seeing the specimen and the content that you have. And if you have time, you can go to the lab on your own, guys. The lab is always open for you to go there. I believe the building closes at 8 p.m. So if you find some time, you know, you find yourself with some free time and you feel like you want to brush up on the anatomy, you can go to the lab by yourself. And trust me, they like when you do that. You go to the lab by yourself, you bring your notes. Nobody's not going to stop you from bringing your notes. So you find your notes and you try to investigate, because that's what anatomy is about, investigating on the specimen. Right, guys? So that's my advice, right? And as well as I said, pre-read and practice your Socrative quizzes and go to UIS. I promise you. And Hyper is offering anatomy this year, right? So we'll be showing you guys high yield concepts, right? And key exam questions that we believe is always on the exam, right? So you guys can look out for that as well. Anybody else has anything to comment?
Mark, you said everything. But I just wanted to add as well, just to go over some stuff that you said as well, that again, guys, anatomy is a lot of topics. You won't be able to finish it all, probably, but just remember, don't spend too much time on this, because this is only 3 credits. That's very important, because there's another course that I'm going to talk to you about called FDT, Fundamental of Disease and Treatment. That's 6 credits. It's double the credits. So you'll realize if you get a high grade in anatomy or the musculoskeletal system and a low grade in FDT, your GPA will be on the lower side because FDT has a heavier weighting. The strategy that worked for me for musculoskeletal system was that I studied the arteries first, all the way from the heart to the fingertips, and then I tackled the nerves, and then I tackled the muscles after that. And that kind of helped me when I was going through the different sections of the arm and the forearm and the hand. Your muscle table, as Mark said, is your shield. The Socrative quizzes is your sword. Time will fly quickly, so try and get as much done as early as possible, as in today, right after we finish this session, you should be in your book. And I love the 3D anatomy book because I was a visual learner as well. And your slides are amazing. And read last, as Mark said. All right. Anyone else want to say anything?
Hold on, Simon. Before I forget, I just had something to say. When we're talking about questions now, you see clinical questions that they will tell you about, these like nerve injuries and stuff like that, wrist drop and all of that. You definitely want to remember those. Those will come on your exam, right? 100%. So you want to remember those guys, right? So practice your questions, like just practice questions, and then you should be fine. Definitely.
Mark, you remember the guy at Ring Road on our exam?
Right. And if you hear them, trust me, they will. And also, yes, I just keep remembering these things. Prof. Louis slides, right? Prof. Lou Baton, right? For his topics, and I say his topics, he gives you all you need to know in his slides. So you don't necessarily, for his topics, you don't have to do any outside reading, right? For his topics, he will give you what you need for his topics, right?
We're doing embryonic yeah. Sorry to cut you.
I can say something before though. So everything that was previously said, perfect. If you really follow these things, anatomy is probably the easiest A you can get for first year. Let me just say that, like straight up. If anybody disagree, state a reason. But honestly, you get the most exposure to anatomy. It's the most practical course that you do. If you do your due diligence, you're going to get the A. The only thing I'd add though is that blue links. I didn't hear blue links mentioned, but I think the Socratic quiz kind of fill that gap still. You have this thing called blue links where basically you can see the cadavers labeled, and when you go to the spotters, it's cadavers that you're identifying and doing stuff with. So blue links is a very good place to go to just look at the stuff. They like to use
Jeremiah.
Blue
right, thanks for saying that, Jeremiah. You see the blue link images and the Socrative quizzes, I guarantee you some of these things will come back on your exam. Watch out in the mid-semester. Remember, I told you this as gospel. Some of those will come back on your exam. Will, 100%.
Then copy and paste it and put it in the exam like this.
Just like how you hear Jeremiah telling me about Ring Road, we got those questions, and trust me, it came back on the exam. Stuff like that. So you want to look out for that.
Yeah, we got
one last thing too. You said the thing about I like the approach Simon said. I didn't even think about that. Learning the artery straight from the heart first, then you do the nerves rather, then you do the muscles. My problem now was that when we were learning it in class, they kind of gave you the muscles first, and you learn I have a particular order that I follow. If you have an order that makes sense to you, stick to it. But having an order when you study the muscles, them make it easier to remember them, because every time I think about a muscle, the first thing, origin, insertion, innervation, action, blood supply, you know the order and it works for you. But like when we did end up though, make sure you study the nerves them and the vessels before you actually try and stick them with the muscle table, because the muscle table going to tell you them.
Exactly.
Right.
Make sure you guys map out like map it out like it's a road, all the way from the heart everywhere. Exactly. And somebody asked me in the chat, did I use the paid or free version of the 3D anatomy? So I actually used an app that was free at the time when I was in first year medical. When I was in first year, I used a free 3D anatomy app called Anatomy Learning, but I don't think the app is actually working anymore. I think it went down. So I'm sure you guys can find other apps as well. I'm not sure if they'll be free, but there's always something out there. So just keep looking, keep asking people, talk to your med sibling.
Lastly, guys, don't forget your root values. That will be on your exam. Don't forget your root values of your nerves. Don't forget them. They will be on your exam. And I believe when they're going through the tutorials and stuff, you will see them stressing these things, like Prof. Luberton. He will ask you questions on these. When they do those little practice quizzes and stuff, you want to pay attention to those, and don't forget your root values. I see a hand.
All right, let's move on to embryonic history now. So, was it Brandon?
Being raised. I want to know if I should take the question first before we move on.
Oh yes, take it.
You can go ahead, Sadie.
I didn't even see the question.
Hi. What exactly is root values?
Okay, great question. So root values now are basically the nerve segments of a nerve that really makes up that nerve. For example, as you saw, Jeremiah said in the chat, long thoracic nerve of Bell. The root values are just the different nerve segments that make up that one nerve. So for example, you were saying C5, C6, C7, right? So once, I mean, it's early days for you guys, right? But I'm pretty
All
sure by
right.
next week or so, you will start to see these things. So when you get to all the pectoralis major, and they're gonna tell you that it's lateral pectoral nerves and medial pectoral nerves that innervate it, and you're going to see it on the slides, especially if you go to Louboutin's classes, you're gonna see C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. And when you get to the brachial plexus, right, you will start to understand this a little bit more, right?
Mm.
So definitely look out for it. So just don't forget them. Don't see them there in brackets and just skip over them. That's what that's the important thing what I'm trying to say. These will be easy marks that you can get on your exam that you don't want to leave out. Right? They can be easy marks for you.
Mark, can I add something?
Sure, because I'm finished now.
Yeah, man, I'll go quick though. As Mark said, you're gonna learn these, but basically, remember that nerves are a part of your central and peripheral nervous system. Your brain, your spinal cord, you have some nerves coming off. Those nerves innervate muscle. But the point where they come off from the spinal cord, that's what they call the root of the nerve because it's rooting off the spinal cord. If it's the cranial nerves, they're rooting off the brain. But what you need to understand is that if you map out the neurovasculars well, neuro for the nerves them, vascular for the vessels them, you will not have a problem that much remembering these root values because you will know what the structures look like. So you can see the brachial plexus in your head because you've practiced it and you understand it. So the root values become something that you know if you study well. So yeah.
All right. So let's move on to embryonic histo now. You guys see the slide change?
Yeah, we see change. Me again?
All right. Yes, you and Brandon. Yes. Or
All right.
am I mixing stuff? It's
So
just you for embryo. Sorry.
all right. So,
Brandon is Mohamed.
so in terms of
And
embryology
Mohamed.
and histology now. Now I had a love-hate relationship with embryo and histo, right? But what I want to say to you is once it is that you understand what is happening, embryo will be a easy course for you, right? Now, from the get-go, I'm going to tell you that definitely you have to read your Langmans. Your Langmans is important. Read that book. I believe it's chapters 1 to 9. You want to read that book, right? For embryology now. Now, in terms of lectures, the slides that you get will not be sufficient. I repeat, will not be sufficient. As well as you want to pre-read your embryo lectures before you go to their lectures, because once it is that they start speaking and you don't know what they're talking about, you will be lost in the open. Trust me, guys. Right? So you want to read your Langmans and you can watch Ninja Nerds 100%. You can watch Ninja Nerds. He explains it well. And I can say this, and I believe everyone else here who's on the call with me that has had an experience with it, you definitely do not want to miss Xavier Brown's hyper videos. To this day, those things are what I use to remember embryology, because embryology is going to come into every system-based course that you do, right? So you have to understand what is happening from this level to get to understand what it is when you're doing neuroscience or you're doing respiratory system or digestive system. Embryology will keep on repeating, guys. So you definitely want to understand this. And I'm telling you, I don't know who made Xavier Brown, right, other than the Lord God himself, but he explains embryology in such a way that it's so easy for you to grasp the concept, right? His name is Xavier Brown. He's a hyper tutor, right? He's a hyper tutor. You guys will meet him. Trust me. Great fella, right? Once it is that you go through these hyper videos, right, and he shows you and you attend these sessions, I am telling you, you are well on your way to an A, right? When you listen to Xavier Brown's hyper. Supplement that with the Ninja Nerd videos and your Langmans, and trust me, and then you practice your questions, you know, those tomatoes that we will give you or your hyper papers. You definitely want to practice those, and then you'll be well on your way. In terms of histology now, right? Prof. Lubaton, all you need to know is on the histology side. Now, what you definitely need to understand what you're looking at in terms of histology. I know at first it might look like you're looking at just everything is pink and look the same, right? It might look like that at first, but when he has his tutorials for histology, you definitely want to be taking pictures and labeling them, right? That will help you. So take the pictures when you go to class and don't just leave them there on your phones or your devices, because by the time you're supposed to go back to it, you don't know what you're looking at. So when you go to these tutorials and then put them up on the TVs, because they're actually looking on the actual slides, these are things that you will see in your exam, right? So you want to take the pictures of these things, and then you want to take the time to go and label these things for yourself so that you understand what you're looking at. And unfortunately, embryonic histology also has a spotter, right? Exam. For example, and it's under the same conditions. However, I believe in December, if it is that they're having the face-to-face spotters, boy, how it works is that rather than you're looking at a specimen, you will be looking in the microscope, right? So you will have to go around. The station will be the microscope, and you have the 4 questions there same way. But you have to look in the microscope, and you will be required to identify what you're looking at and answer questions based on what slide they put there, right? So what you really want to do is definitely pay attention to the red slides, stuff that Prof. Lubaton has on his slides. Get me? Those are good. And you just want to understand the basic concept of what the epithelials are and the glands, basement membranes. You want to definitely get those. Don't neglect it, guys. Some of you might think histology is boring. I still do, right? But you definitely still need to understand these concepts, because as I said, when you start the system-based courses again, these simple things that you see keep coming up will come back. It will be asked back in these system-based courses. And that is why the program is designed like this, for you guys to learn these first. And then when you get into the system-based courses, you appreciate these concepts being implemented within the systems, right? So you definitely want to do that. There's, as I said before, read your medical embryology. And for those of you who have Dr. Najib, he can also help you with embryology. His videos might be long, but they are pretty good, right? So if you have the time and you want to just read them, right? Watch the videos, sorry, then definitely do that. Make your notes, and if some of you like drawing, try and draw the stuff, what I mean? That would help you guys to remember as well. So definitely do that. You don't want embryo to be something that is following you around or hanging over your head. You want to like embryo, guys. The more you like it, the easier it will be for you, right? And as he said, I believe that Simon can tell you these early concepts, as he was telling us earlier before the session, they will come back even into your clinical practice when you're practicing on the wards and stuff like that. So you definitely want to not neglect embryo, even though it's little teeny weeny 2 credits, guys. You know what I mean? You just want to give it your due diligence. Don't neglect it. Just pay attention, do the slides, and as I said, for embryo, pre-read, guys. Definitely pre-read. Because when they get to that lecture theater and they start talking, trust me, they will think, they assume that you know that what they're talking about, and they just keep on going. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, trust me, you will be lost, and you don't want to be that guy, right? Because then you're gonna have to catch up after that. So definitely, and you don't have to pre-read the lecture per se before, because as I said, the lecture doesn't really have all that much information, except I would say for Prof. Lubaton, if I remember well, you can pre-read, watch a video like Ninja Nerds. He explains it, what happens in the first week, second week of development and stuff like that. You want to do that from early. So that will be good for you guys. Anybody else have anything to say?
I think you covered everything. Brandon, you wanted to say anything, or?
I mean, speaking after Mark, just going to be me basically repeating the same points and everything. But for me, embryo, all right, let me start off by saying I didn't like Righty. His slides, the way how him deliver the content, his whole organization and explanation of everything was just really horrible. I remember the first class I went in looking forward to, learning about mitosis, meiosis, and then him start talking about Adam and Eve and the Bible and all of that. So I just left the class and just read the embryo book. So, but yes, the one thing on this PowerPoint, this presentation that you see in here that applies to me would be for embryology would be the Langman's embryology book. I can tell you that chapters 1 to 9 from that book will be on the exam. That is literally all the exam will be about, chapters 1 to 9. So when I heard about that, I just started pacing myself. I was like, okay, maybe I don't need to go to this class with Roy T because, you know, him probably get taught about the serpent and the snake and the apple and all of that. So I was like, all right, let me not even bother. And let me just read chapter 1. So I read chapter 1 and I supplement it with a couple Ninja Nerds videos. So Langman embryo and Ninja Nerds video got me through for embryo. Easily. But other than that, for histo, all you need for histo, well, all I needed for histo was JP slides. And I don't know if I should, but if I should tell you this, because seeing that you're going to have face-to-face spotters, but you see in his slides, he has certain pictures that are outlined in red. Those images have the highest probability of coming back on the exams. But seeing that you guys will be doing the spotters in person and will have to be
online, so they
oh yes, okay, that's true. Yeah, so your mid-semester will be online. So pay attention to the pictures in JP slides that he has outlined in red. They have the highest probability of coming back on the exams.
And definitely, guys, you see those small boxes in the Langman's embryology, do not overlook them, right?
Yes, those blue boxes.
Don't skip
clinical
past
correlations, trust me.
We'll have you read a whole chapter and the questions will come from those alone. Like, he's like that. So you definitely don't want to skip out those things, guys.
Pay attention to the pictures in those blue boxes as well.
Right, the pictures will come back on your exam too.
Exactly. Thank you guys for those amazing points. Again, your embryology exam is on Langman. It's not on the slides, to be honest. If I could rewind time, honestly, I don't think I'd be going to a single class. I'd just be reading that book, chapters 1 to 9, and knowing the diagram. Because you know what they do? They will take the diagrams in the book and just put them back on the paper and say, label it. Boom. So if you don't know your diagrams, don't understand the concepts, you won't do well. How do you understand the concepts? Is Langman the best book ever? No. You're going to read it and you're going to get a headache. It's not the best book. There are other resources that you must supplement it with. Some resources that help me. I use the book called The Developing Human. That book I thought was good. I also use YouTube. Ninja Nerd is great as well. Najib is great as well. I supplemented it with other things because the book alone can be confusing at times. Okay, guys? So don't feel like you're alone when you're confused. Yeah, so that's really it for this.
Simon,
all right,
I want to say something on the Langman, because honestly, I feel like we pretty up Langman too much. It's not an easy book, guys. People are gonna always say they just read the Langman. Simon, I did that Langman. It honestly, the only thing I'd say is make sure you be diligent with it and try to read all of that 9 chapters. Because what happens is that you see that first 9 chapters, they're trying to give you the basic behind how the embryo developed to a certain point, and then afterwards they're going to go into the system. So I think the first one after that is like the respiratory system, the cardiovascular. But the thing about the Langman is not an easy book to read. Now I tell you this, people are gonna
about chapter 4, chapter 5, like just gave me a headache trying to understand. I felt like they're all over the place with it. But definitely, yeah.
Oh, sorry. The only thing I'm gonna say is YouTube videos like Najib, if you can start Dr. Najib videos early, because his videos, you realize that when he's teaching directly from the Langman in terms of how he describes the stuff. So it's like audio Langman. If you can start early and watch his videos, I wish I didn't know that. And of course Xavier, because Xavier going to make you understand it. So that's all I say.
Right, that's what I was about to say, guys. You don't want to be that person that probably never read the book or read the book and never understand, and you leave it right there. Don't do that. Supplement what you have. Use the resources available to you, right? So definitely you still have to read your Langmans because questions will come from it. And you trust me, when Simon said they will take pictures from that and just literally ask you to label it, that will be happening. And if you ask me, those are free marks you don't want to get. Even if you don't know what the picture was telling you, per se, if you can remember what it labeled it, you will get some marks just by doing that. So you don't want to leave those free marks out there that you can get, right? And as I said, if even after reading the book and all of that, you're still in doubt, find Xavier Brown, guys. I'm telling you.
I literally remember the spermatogenesis picture. Oh my God. Anyway, come. Someone is asking for the developing human textbook. There's a website where you can get any textbook in a PDF format. Anybody remember the name of the website? I can't remember it right now, but I'll send it in the chat. Yeah, you could use
Gen Library or the Lib Genesis.
Yeah. Yes, Library Genesis. Yes. And Ninja Nerd is one, and Najib is another one. Yes. So this. All right, more med time. Then we finish up with the beast. Nathaniel, you can just take us away.
So I'm Nathaniel Campbell. So I will be giving you a few tips on molecular medicine. In the interest of time, it won't take too long, right? So first and foremost, MoleMed is a 2-credit course. So in terms of priority, it would not fall number 1 on the list. But as Mark was saying earlier about embryonic histology, also treat this in a similar fashion. Don't overlook it or underestimate it, because it's still a wealth of information and it's critical information, and they test very seriously. All right, so there are a few lecturers from personal experience. I didn't really learn well from them. So in order to supplement lecturers such as Dr. Ali, because he has an Indian accent and it's very difficult to understand, I utilized a lot of YouTube videos, for example, for topics like PCR and stuff like that, that he will be teaching, right? Utilize YouTube videos and other resources in order to supplement that information. But some lecturers actually have very clear slides. For example, Dr. Shirley Brown. I know, bro. I know when I understand one word from Dr. Ali. I know, up to now. But yeah, some lecturers, they have very clear slides and they test directly from the slides. So, for example, lecturers such as Shirley Brown, Dr. Shirley Brown, this slide exactly that is on the picture right here, nucleotides and nucleic acids, that is a very detailed lecture. And I don't even think you need to really supplement that lecture with additional information, because she was very thorough, and in her lecture specifically, she will be very clear about the information and she will help you understand it. And don't be afraid to ask her questions, because when she answers questions, she answers with information that she will test on the final exam, right? So I'm pretty sure you have heard every presenter so far mention YouTube videos. YouTube videos are critical for MoleMed. You see, because MoleMed has the element of biochemistry to it, there are a lot of processes and step-by-step cycles and stuff like that that you need to study for MoleMed, right? So these YouTube videos now will help you to sequence these processes and help to solidify this information in your mind. From personal experience, I'm telling you, without YouTube videos, would I still have MoleMed 2 credits outstanding? No. Yeah. So Ninja Nerd, all of those stuff, YouTube video, critical. No, this book right here, Lipping Cuts, it is also very useful. Jeremiah introduced me to this. I have never seen the book before, but when Jeremiah introduced it to me, at first, to be honest, it was very technical. I never like to see so much big words in a row one time. But the images within the Lipping Cuts will help you to also sequence these processes in the biochemical element of MoleMed. And then now you'll be better going towards the exam. So it's not really much that I have to say for MoleMed, but based on what I said, you can try to apply those principles and then you should be good going towards the exams.
Yeah, I can add to that real quickly. definitely, guys, when I tell you definitely, you guys are gonna have some demonstrations or labs per se for your molecular medicine, right? When the man from Carrigen forward or come and teach you, guys, you definitely want to understand what he's saying about paternity testing, QSTR analysis, right? The graphs and everything. When he comes, if you don't understand, don't let him leave unless you understand what you're looking at. Because you're gonna have labs with it, right? And as well as they're going to bring questions from those series of lectures back on your exam, guys. Definitely. And for example, they will literally put the graph that you did, some of the very same ones that you did in the lab, back on that exam. And if it is that you never understood it before, you can't go understand it in the lab, right? So when it is that you get on to karyotyping, those lectures and the DNA analysis and paternity testing, you definitely want to go to that class and pay attention. I mean, we had the benefit of having it online, so if we had missed it, we could watch the recording. You guys do not have that now, so I'm letting it be known that you definitely don't want to miss that, because it's pretty difficult to even find stuff online in a sense that just wholly supplements that learning right there, right? Those topics, right? It's kind of difficult, because I remember even when we had certain issues with the lab and we were trying to understand some of the questions they asked, searching up the answer like that was not straightforward per se. So you don't want to miss out on those classes. That's just my 2 cents on the molecular medicine.
Yeah, one more thing. There is a specific lecturer by the name of Dr. Stewart. I like to say that her slides resemble a skeleton because there's a few points on it and no flesh. There's no meat on it. It's just bones, right? So what I would advise for those lectures specifically, you should try, as I said, to watch a YouTube video before, or you had her for biochem, so you can tell them about her right now. I don't even have to say it again. So what I would advise, watch a YouTube video beforehand, right? So you have some information in your head and those points will serve as a guide to our class, right? And you will be able to follow what she's saying. And what she does say in class, she will test, right? So even though these slides are very skeletal, she will say what she will test. And you guys don't have the luxury of recordings anymore. So try and gather some information beforehand so you're able to follow and make connections in her lectures. Dr. Stewart, I don't remember her first name. God knows. Cheryl.
Personal, yes. Thank you, Nathaniel. Dr. Stewart, I saw that on my exams. Literally, Dr. Stewart she was taking the words off the PowerPoint and just putting them back in the exam. And it's just, you had to remember all the slides. So yeah, Shirley Brown, she was good too. But remember, first thing you guys need to have is a topic list. You guys make sure you have the topic list for every course. Make sure you guys have that. And make sure you guys remember this is a teach yourself degree. Lecturers can only do so much in 1 hour. Biochem is a very detailed course. So you guys need to look elsewhere for more information to understand the concepts better. First Aid on the side there has a lot of amazing diagrams. I love that book. Mark, you're saying something?
Yeah, bro. I was saying you're gonna see that lecturer in mole med and as well as cell bio. But I was saying I'll wait until cell bio is brought to the forefront for me to preach. All right. So just wait.
Okay. Lastly, FDT now. Jeremiah, you want to start with your thing first and then we look at my thing after?
All right, sure, I can do that.
All right, let me stop sharing.
I don't want to take up too much time. Afternoon, guys. You can hear me? Can you hear me?
We're here.
Yes, I can.
Cool. All right, Simon. Guys, this is Simon. Simon was basically same Simon talking to us now. He was basically my savior for FET. Him and Kyra. Because I tell you, FET is that course that going. FET is that course that going take the most energy, and you just have to find different ways of sticking the content in the head. So Simon, he's going to be teaching again this year. I would definitely recommend. Yes, and Carol, I swear they saved my life. I swear. FET, what I can say about FET. First of all, just a little small thing. Why FET? Talk about that. You see, I've heard this several times and I've come to realize this as well. FET is the first course that you do that truly makes you understand what medicine is about. Because yeah, anatomy makes you feel like a doctor because you get to see the cadavers and you get introduced to your first patient. They're going to tell you guys, don't worry, you're going to see like promotions and stuff, so you get to know when the hyper sessions come. And I will personally remind you, but trust me, they saved my life many times. But as I was saying, FET is that course that introduces you to what medicine is like. Anatomy, yes, because anatomy shows you, make you feel like you're a doctor. But when you talk about FET, you're learning the fundamentals of what medicine, treating medicine is like. You're learning pathology, you're learning pharmacology and microbiology. So you're learning that because with pathology, you get to understand what are diseases, how diseases come about. You start at the cellular level. I'm going to talk about that pattern shortly, but they get to understand diseases. You truly appreciate that. And then from you get to go through those pathology lectures, you see the different diseases that can happen. You start wondering how you're still alive. You look at these lecture slides. You start transition from that depression and start seeing maybe the pharmacology aspect, because they can't just have diseases and don't know how to treat it. So the pharmacology follows suit. And you get to understand the drugs. So like a lot of people end up disliking pharmacology because they focus more on what is the drug rather than why the drug and how the drug. Like understanding mechanisms of action, I'm going to talk about that. But basically, pharmacology, knowing how to treat those diseases that stress you out from pathology. And then you have the microbiology, which people tend to shove in the side. Microbiology is important because that tells you the pathogens that causes these diseases. So you learn the viruses, the bacteria, the fungi, and other things. So understanding why FET, because FET is going to make you a good doctor. If you master FET, you're better off as a doctor. How many credits is your 6 course? So 6 credits. So you need to appreciate that it's 6 credits. So let's say one of them actually get an A+ on your FET and you manage to get the A's on the others. Chances are your GPA going to look good. So really take home the fact that it's a 6 credit course and give it that 6 credit work. The 6 credit work meaning that you should be mastering your FET slides. You shouldn't try to say, all right, I'm going to leave them. And that leads me into this next thing, study balance and boredom. I put boredom there because for the study balance, I want you to understand that you're not supposed to make FET be the thing you want to leave in the background. It should be the forefront. And I learned that a little late. And I even heard somebody say this, like, try to love FET. If you can find yourself spending more time on FET than anything else, let me try to big this up, you'll be in a better place in first year, MBBS, first semester, that's what I want to say. Try to spend a lot of time at FET. Make it be that subject where if you're thinking about doing something right now, it's FET. Not saying that you're going to get the others, but you need to balance FET very well. And that leads to boredom, because the thing is, after a while, the pathology slides become monotonous. You keep learning about things and just one bag of things, and the pathology is sometimes not that interesting. But if you're following it, it can be interesting. At a point, you're going to get bored with FET, especially with the pathology slides. What I would recommend is that you try to follow the lectures, because if you understand it, it's a difference from not understanding it. In the sense of, even if you don't study it yet, try to have a basic understanding of what's happening, so that when you go to the lectures, you can follow and ask questions and try to make it a story in your head. The best story that you're going to hear for FET is the inflammatory response story. And I tell you see, information, you're basically learning how the body fights infections. It tells you the process, it tells you the different ways that the body defends itself, and you can just kind of cartoonize that in your head if that's a thing that you do. Like trying to understand how the body defends itself, and you try to make that interest in that process combat the boredom that you inevitably get from, oh, you need to learn another cytogenic disorder, oh, you need to do this, because it's not that interesting sometimes. However, if you try to find the reasons that you're learning it, because you need to know this, because you're going to treat it someday, then maybe the interest will come. And some of it is actually nice. So keep in mind, boredom may come, but try to combat that. I was saying for pathology, there's a little thing you need to understand. The way that we go about pathology for FET, you start off with the cells, because every disease that comes starts from the cell. So you start having lectures structured around what the cell is about, how the cell can get injured, things that can happen to the cell like adaptation, etc. And then we start getting a little further. So we say, all right, now that we know about the cell and things that can happen to the cell, let's talk about inflammation that takes part with a group of cells. And then that's so you're getting that lovely story of the inflammatory response. Like it's a nice little story that takes up a good amount of the semester. Go through that story. And then you want to start thinking about, ultimately, when you're thinking pathology, there are segments you need to consider. Some diseases cause infections. Or when I say infections, I'm talking about these diseases are as a result of a pathogen. So like a virus or a bacteria, and they cause an inflammatory response. So generally you have diseases that are infection related. And then you have the other diseases now, other category, cancerous, specifically the benign versus malignant. This was a game changer for me because after a while, you're going to learn a lot of diseases. And if you can categorize the diseases into, all right, what are the inflammatory diseases? What are the malignant versus benign diseases? That makes things easier. It's just like anatomy where you say, all right, I'm looking at a muscle, I need to say origin, insertion, da, da, da. You're looking at a particular system, for example, respiratory system. Tell me if I'm talking too fast, guys. Trying not to pass over. But saying that, for example, if you're looking at the respiratory system, you can say, all right, what are the inflammations that can happen with the respiratory system? We're talking about a sinusitis or rhinosinusitis. Then you can talk about what kind of cancer can happen. Benign, you can talk about the papillomas. Malignant, you can talk about the nasopharyngeal carcinomas. And you have a pattern to how you study pathology. So keep in mind, you're learning this so you can become a better doctor. And boredom will come, especially when you do like these lectures. So you have this lecture called the chemical pathology lecture that you're going to see next week. It's a very long lecture, but just try to appreciate why you're learning it and link it back. You go to hyper sessions and hey man, they're going to you guys, trust me. Hyper saved me so many times with these things. And like I said, boredom comes with certain things, especially pathology, but you stick to it and you try to find out the whys. Because when you remember all of this stuff, you need to understand it. You're not just sticking random stuff in your head. But I was saying, this lecture in particular, I remember there's a lecture that you're going to do next week called Chemical Paths. I started studying that lecture like September, and I finished studying that lecture like December. What that means is that we end up procrastinate on that lecture because of how long and monotonous it is. A lot of FET may be like that. Don't let that be your story. Try to study it consistently and attend hyper so that you can get the interest in the information. And like I say, hyper, ninja nerd, you have this thing called pathoma. I don't know how beneficial pathoma is for first semester, but it's something to look into. Simon can tell you more about that. For pharmacology, I summarize all of this by just saying know your mechanisms of action. So you need to understand how the drug works. So like you in particular, your group, the drugs that you need to really spend time with are your antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, probably one other anti I'm not remembering. But these are the drugs that combat the different pathogens that cause diseases. And you have to learn a list of them. You have to understand how they work. So you need to know the mechanisms of action of these drugs before you can say, all right, I'm going to learn the penicillins versus the tetracycline. You need to understand the drugs. What I realized when you understand the drugs, the names eventually stick. It's like learning somebody and eventually you just know the name. So things like that. And eventually the memory comes up. And marker B, just make sure you study the slides then well. Like it comes on later down the semester, so it's sometime you end up having a rush through it. Try to study it enough so that you can catch the particular details of stress. And also the pictures that they come up with, know them for OSPE. So you need to know those pictures and the stuff and the etc. So marker B, that definitely might come on your OSPE. So you want to spend a little time looking at those pictures. And FET in general is just this big, long journey, but it's a journey that gets you closer to being a good doctor. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. That was great. So let me share my screen right now. Let me show them my 2 cents on this. All right, guys. Jeremiah really said everything that I was gonna say, but just to
Sorry.
reiterate,
Guys, I say Simon saved my life so many times.
FDT is how many credits, guys? Everybody put it in the chat how many credits FDT is, just so everybody can know.
Wait, Simon, is
6
sharing your screen?
credits.
Is sharing your screen?
Yes. Are you seeing it?
Well, I'm not, but I'm not sure.
No, I think Jeremiah, you need to stop sharing.
I just sorry.
All right. But just a second, Simon. Just I'm gonna step out now. Leave the session for the evening. But it's been a great session thus far. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the session. Guys, you're not gonna find this anywhere else but at Hyper. You're not gonna find this anywhere else but with the team that we have partnered with for MedSkool KickOff. So just putting in a shameless plug from early to that you prepare for the finale of MedSkool KickOff next week Sunday. At the same time, you'll have some more words from us this week as to some sessions that we will be having between this and next week. Usually with Hyper, our first 1 or 2 sessions for each course is usually free. So you'll be able to witness firsthand what these young people have been alluding to for the evening. But also we're going to be, I think we already sent a link or 2 to some of our free Hyper videos as well, so look out for some more of that this week. And yes, you'll hear back from us. You'll hear from us this week about textbooks for those who want to buy physical textbooks. We've partnered with Book Jungle to source some of those. So you'll hear some more from us. So for me personally, have a good evening, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the session.
Thank you very much, Devon. We're just wrapping up now, guys, so we won't keep you guys much longer. Just to finish off with FDT, you guys know 6 credits. This is the course you need to be spending the most time on. And what makes this course difficult, in my opinion, is because when you study all your lectures, you go in the exam, you can still be a little bit confused. You know why? The reason is because they test you on things they haven't fully taught you yet. Like, for example, in second year, you go on to do courses like digestive, cardio, endocrine system. And to really get an excellent grasp on FDT, you have to understand a lot of those concepts that they teach you later. But they still put those questions on your test because they want to see if you can make the best guess based off the options they gave you and based off what they taught you so far. So don't be discouraged if you run into those questions as well, because they definitely will pop up. So FDT is made up of the 3 pillars: Pharm, Path, and Microbe. There are many lectures, especially in Path. I think that one has the most. And the first Path lecture is that chemical pathology lecture. And it normally discourages everyone right off the bat. Why? It's 100 and something slides, and it's very detailed, and they don't really explain certain things that you need to understand what they have in the slides. They don't explain everything. So I want to remind you, when you get to that lecture on chemical pathology right here, I have it on the slide, don't be discouraged. Because I have some friends who opened that lecture and said, okay, they're not going to do pathology and FDT anymore. They're going to do Pharm, they're going to do Microbe, they're going to do Mole, Med, Embryo, Anatomy, and then they're not going to focus on FDT Path. But Path is so important because it will come back every single year. FDT is so important. Don't be discouraged when you get to that. Just take your time. As Jeremiah said, it took him months to go through that lecture because you kept procrastinating it because it's just difficult. But don't worry. Most people can't finish that lecture in a day. Just take it in chunks. Okay, yes, sorry, Mark. Just to finish up, the lectures aren't the best, so it's very important that you learn to teach yourself. There's so many amazing resources that I want you guys to use. But the problem is people tend to neglect the slides. Remember, they test you on the slides, but it's good to get an understanding elsewhere and then go back to the slides. Regarding the resources, I love to read. So Rang and Dale's Pharmacology, I thought was great. Clinical Microbiology, Made Simple, I thought that was great for understanding micro. But there's so many resources, again, that I want you guys to try and not limit yourself. The earlier you start searching, the sooner you'll find what fits you best. And I wanted to say also, in my sessions, I'll be explaining the most difficult concepts as best as I can. And I also supplement them with practice questions because that's how I believe students should learn. And that will help you prepare for your test as well. All right, that's all I wanted to say about this. Cell bio now, Mark, and then we should be done.
All right, so guys, so cell bio. I don't know if you guys noticed the slide looked different from the rest of them, right? Looked a bit, you know, scarce, right? Cell bio notes now. Let me tell you. The lectures, you have certain lecturers there, like I believe he's the course coordinator, Prof. Raghaber Singh. He does not give you guys his lecture, right? If he, I don't know if he's going to come to the lecture theater this time now that it's face-to-face, but he didn't show up. We didn't have a synchronous class with him, right? He just uploaded his lecture to YouTube before the semester started, and that was it. We've never seen the guy, right? So you want to be aware of lectures like this. And again, Dr. Stewart will be teaching you guys in cell biology. Now, cell biology is a course that can be easily neglected, and it can become a difficult course if you do that, right? So what you really want to do is definitely you want to pay attention to the compile notes. I'm hearing that they kind of switched up the structure on you guys, because what it was for us, they had a few topics like carbohydrates and stuff like that with Dr. Brian and those early concepts, right? At first, you can definitely pay attention to Dr. Sophia Bryan. She's a good lecturer in terms of her content, right? So you could definitely pay attention to her slides and stuff and listen to her. However, the other concepts, you're gonna have to, I advise read the compile notes, because the compile notes really tries to do everything for both semesters, because remember, cell bio is a year-long course. But as I said, I heard they were switching it up. Switching it up, right? In terms of you guys have a final exam this semester. I'm not sure if that's still the case, but for us, it was just a mid-semester this year. And the cell bio courses tend to finish teaching those topics early, right? They teach those topics early, and then you do the mid-semester from about, I believe you finish learning cell bio maybe around November. So they do it early, and then after that, you don't see cell bio until next semester, right? Okay, so I'm seeing in the chat, they said it's one mid-semester. So it's the same as us then. So you're gonna do a mid-semester, right? Like what we did. You definitely want to try and get your best grade on that mid-semester. And guys, I will tell you, time, you see me tell you, time is the enemy. For us, cell bio mid-semester was the worst exam we did, and that was because we had maybe 25 questions in 30 minutes, right? That's a race. Cool. And for me, my experience was that question one for me was, I don't know, my brain probably shut off, and I was there, it was some half-life question and thing, and you know, I spent a good ordeal trying to figure out the answer, and a good time, and by the time I look, half my time was done, and I had to rush through the rest of the paper, right? Do not let that be you. So you definitely want to know what you're doing before you get into the exam, because the time can disappear really quickly in cell bio exams, right? So you want to think about that. The next thing is, you know, when in doubt, definitely just practice your tomatoes. I mean, all the year groups normally tell us that, hey, the cell bio exam repeat, blah, blah, blah. But you see what did happen to us? Then trick we and kill we, right? Because we thought that would have been the case. I mean, some questions do repeat, but they normally repeated the exam for the last 5 years, as Simon was saying. And then our year, them switch it up a little bit, you know? So you don't want to totally rely on past papers, but you definitely want to practice those questions just to see how they ask their questions. Because sometimes, you know, you might think that, oh, asking about carbohydrates and stuff might be straightforward, you know, this is chemistry or whatever it is that you're doing, but no, it isn't. Right? They tend to ask their questions in such a way, right, that it's not really, it's kind of difficult to understand sometimes. So you definitely want to expose yourself to those questions from early, you know, and again, read the compile notes. And as I said, by next semester, I believe you only have a few topics next semester. Do not wait until the end of the semester to try and review everything that you did in first semester, as well as those little small topics that you'll be doing in second semester for the final exam, right? You do not want to do that, right? Because that will put you in problems. And lastly, guys, you know, go with God. Literally, when I was studying for the finals in second semester, I remember I decided to, I tried to read through the compile notes the night before the exam. And I don't advise you guys to try and do that because I kind of neglected. So I'm speaking from experience now, guys, right? I kind of neglected cell bio because, you know, you're so busy. You're doing FDT, cell bio done from early in the first semester, and you start learning neuron, hematology, and all of them things the next semester. And then you forget about cell bio, right? And I had to be reading this compile notes the night before. And to be honest, at a point, I reached and I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to practice questions until my week and pray to God, pray to Father God that he brings back these questions that I'm practicing. That's literally, it was, cell bio was the only exam I went into with just pure faith, brother. And may I tell you, say, God is good. God is good, right? I went with a lot of faith, guys, because I neglected it and I got through, but you know, them say puss and dog now have the same luck. So I don't want to advise any of you to do the same thing that I did. So you want to practice your questions from early, read your compile notes, definitely go to Sophia Bryan lectures. And when in doubt, use YouTube. Ninja Nerds will help you. You know, YouTube, use any books you can find, any resources, and you should be fine, guys. Right? But definitely you're gonna have lecturers that come, and again, their lecture slides are skeleton, right? Minimal stuff, and then you go on the exam and you wonder when you learn this, bro. And make sure you pay attention to Ragabir Singh lectures. His topics are also covered in the compile notes, but he doesn't give his lectures as far as I can know. Even when I was doing basic medical science, he didn't give his lectures, and you might not even see the man, bro. Right? No joke. So yeah, and you don't want to neglect his topics because he's a course coordinator, so they will ask questions from his topics, right? I remember when I did the exam in basic med sci, and the first 10 questions on my exam was from his thing. And what had happened to me was that I totally forgot that, because I only studied off lecture slides back then, and I totally forgot that he had taught us a few topics. So, you know, say I was guessing the first 10 questions. I was completely bamboozled for the first 10 questions when I did that, guys. So you definitely want to make note of that, his topics, and try to understand. So those are my 3 cents, guys. You know, all the best for the semester. And as I said, go with God when you see cell bio.
Thank you very much, Mark. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed. I know we said a lot of information today. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be up on YouTube, so you guys can rewatch it later on in the semester to make sense of half the stuff we're talking about. The giveaway. I think Devon is going to deal with that. Did he say he was going to announce a winner or something? I will talk to him about that, and he will update you guys a bit later.
Remember, Nathaniel and Brandon will be going through just a few, you know, key concepts in early concepts in anatomy just before you guys go. So you guys want to give them your attention, guys. Because they will be tutoring you in US as well. So you definitely want to pay attention to them.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So we're actually not done yet. I'm sorry. Brandon, Mark, are you guys going to do the US thing now? Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, they are going to do it right now. So Brandon and Nathaniel is going to do it right now.
Yeah, Nathaniel will share the screen or share the presentation.
Yeah, go and bring it up right now.
All right, perfect.
Is everybody seeing my screen right now?
Yes, I can see it.
Yes.
Lovely. So, to introduce myself again, well, first of all, I'm going to have to tell you guys good evening. Good evening, my doctors. You know, so to introduce myself again, I'm Nathaniel Campbell, and I am the head of anatomy in the US Surgical Society for the upcoming year 2022-2023. And with me, I have Brandon. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself right now.
So a pleasant afternoon to everyone. I hope nobody is tired. My name is Brandon Henry, and I'm the Deputy Head of Anatomy for US for the 2022-2023 academic year.
All right, lovely, the great Brandon Henry. All right, so as Mark said to you just now, this segment will just serve as a general introduction into the world of anatomy, and we will be discussing certain anatomical terminologies and bones of the body. So moving right along. Firstly, in order to discuss anatomical terms, we have to discuss what is known as the anatomical position, right? This anatomical position now is a central concept behind all descriptions of location within the body. This is the stance or position of the body to which all planes, movements, and directions are related, right? So for one to assume the anatomical position, this person would have to be standing upright, as you can see here with the skeleton. Is everybody seeing my mouse?
Yes. Yes.
So yes, you can see the skeleton standing upright, facing forward. So we can see the face, we can look into his orbits right here. His arms are straight, no bending of the elbows, and the hands are held by the hips right here, palms facing forward, right? The feet are pointing in the same direction and the toes are pointing forward, right? That is the anatomical position. Now, since we have described anatomical position, we can get into anatomical terminology. Anatomical terminology is a jargon used by anatomists and other medical professionals to describe various planes, movements, or locations that differ from the anatomical position previously described. So now we will be discussing three main terms today. So firstly, we have a plane, then we have location, and now we have movements. A plane is a 2D slice through three-dimensional space, which can be thought of as a glass sheet. So if I were to cut somebody's body in half and view it from the area which was cut, I would be viewing that person's body in the plane at which it was cut, right? Now on to location. This term is used to differentiate two ends of the same structure. So anatomical terms of location, let's say, for example, we have the arm, the bone in the arm. Can anybody in the group chat tell me what is the name of the bone in the arm? Brandon, I want you to watch the group chat for me and tell me the answers that they're giving.
The radius and ulna.
No, good try, but the
I've seen
arm,
humerus.
not the forearm.
To John Shelley. I hope I'm not pronouncing that right. I'm seeing humerus by Sharissa Moreland. MC. Same humerus.
Brilliant.
Everybody,
right.
Humerus, lovely.
So on the bright one, you guys are telling me the humerus, right? So if we want to describe a point on the humerus in relation to another point on the humerus, we would use anatomical terms of location in order to describe these points, right? Now, movements, these are changes in the position of the body parts away from the anatomical position. So once you alter the position of your body from the anatomical position that was previously described, we would use terms of movement in order to classify that change. Now, first group of anatomical terminology we're discussing is planes, right? So another definition for plane, these planes are precise cuts now made through the body, which allow it to be separated and viewed from different angles, right? Each plane creates different divisions. So we'll be discussing three planes: sagittal plane, coronal plane, and transverse planes. Now the sagittal plane, pardon my typo right there. I'm not done. All right, so the sagittal plane is a vertical line which divides the body into a left and a right section. So if I were to cut my head down the middle, continue straight down the midline, I'd be cutting my body via the sagittal plane, right? And using that sagittal plane, I would divide myself into a left half and a right half. That's practically what the sagittal plane is, right? Now, the coronal plane. Coronal plane is a vertical line which divides the body into a front section and a back section. So if I'm looking at you in the face right now, I'm looking at your front section, right? If I'm looking at your head back, I'm looking at your back section. What the coronal plane now does, it separates those views, right? So it would also be a line down the middle which separates those views, right? So now the transverse plane, unlike the sagittal and coronal planes, is a horizontal line which divides the body into an upper and lower section. I didn't want to give you a joke still, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over that for now. All right. So to be interactive once more, I have blanked out the names of these planes based on the description just now. Can any bright student in the chat tell me what plane would this image depict? Everybody seeing where my mouse is right now? Raise and Tori Harrison. Open your mic and tell me.
Sagittal, sorry.
Brilliant. Tori Harrison is correct. The sagittal plane. All right. In the interest of time, I won't ask you everything else, but you guys get the gist. This is the coronal plane, and this is the transverse plane. And this is practically just repeating the same thing down here. Right? Now, right here, we have a couple images of the brain to show a medical application of these anatomical planes, right? So I'm pretty sure most of you have heard about medical technology called MRIs, right? What the MRI is used to do in the body, it's used to take various images of stuff that we can't see from the surface, right? So in this slide now is basically just showing us the application of the coronal plane, because in this MRI now, we're able to take images of the brain. As the slide says, it can take 28 cranial images of the brain from the back to the front. So basically, we can cut the brain along 28 different coronal planes, right? And view it in a similar fashion as it was as to like slices of the brain, right? So that's exactly how we would apply coronal planes to real life medical technology. Now, the next group of anatomical terms, location, right? So as I said earlier, location is used to differentiate between two different ends of the same structure. I gave you the example of the humerus earlier. Now, these terms help to avoid any ambiguity that can arise when describing the location of structures, right? So in this image now, we can see various anatomical terms of location being displayed, and we will explain each of them going forward. Guys in the chat, in this meeting right now, don't be afraid to ask any questions. If you have, just raise your hand and I'll answer, right? Now, this slide is very critical. As simple as it may seem, it's very critical. So, points of attachment. Points of attachment are important in the orientation of muscles and bones, right? Each and every single muscle within the body has an origin and an insertion, right? So what is an origin, some may ask? As the word says, this is where the muscle begins, right? This is the site on the skeleton where the muscle arises. Some muscles in the body now may have additional origins, right? Or additional insertions. And these additional origins may come from fibrous sheets known as fascia, or in some rare cases, some muscles may come from the bellies of other muscles, right? So throughout the semester, when these exceptions come up, you're gonna say, yo, you know, Senator nearly tell me this on 9/11/2022. And then you're just going to solidify that in your memory going forward and never forget it, right? So one more thing about the origin. This is the attachment site now that is fixed during contraction. So this origin does not move when the muscle contracts. As opposed to the insertion now, this is the attachment site that moves when the muscle contracts. So everybody is supposed to know which muscle this is right now. I'm going to tell you in the interest of time. I want it to be very interactive, but I'm going to tell you in the interest of time. So this muscle right here is a biceps brachii muscle, right? I'm not going to tell you the exact origins and insertions because I want you guys to do some research, and plus we don't have as much time for me to explain the various intricacies and stuff. So I'm just going to describe the general locations, right? So the origin is in the shoulder region, right? And the insertion is in the forearm in a bone called the radius, as you can see right here. Based on the principle that I just said, when the muscle contracts, the origin does not move, the insertion moves, right? As Mark said earlier, Mark gave you a critical piece of information that you need to know because you will be tested on the actions of the various muscles that you learn through the musculoskeletal system. Mark said it earlier, and don't you ever forget. In order to decipher the action of a muscle, just know the action of a muscle is in the direction of the origin. So right here, when the biceps brachii contracts, this insertion point would be pulled towards the origin, right? So basically you'll be flexing the elbow joint, bringing the forearm closer to the shoulder region, right? Now we have a lot of anatomical terms of location. So I'll briefly describe each two. Anterior now, as I said earlier, relates to the front of the body. So if I'm looking at your face, I'm looking at your anterior region, right? Posterior refers to the back of the body. If I'm looking at your head back, as I said earlier, I'm looking at your posterior region. Now the midline is an imaginary vertical line that divides the body equally down the middle, right? So based on the planes that I've described earlier to you, the sagittal plane would incorporate the midline. No? Now there are two terms in relation to the midline, lateral and medial. When we describe something as lateral, it is further away from the midline than another point, right? And when we describe something as medial, it is closer to the midline than another structure or another point on the structure, right? Superior, when we describe something as superior, it's closer to the head. It is the upper part of a structure, as opposed to the inferior now, which is further away from the head, closer to the feet region, or it is the lower part of a structure. Superficial and deep. These terms of location go in relation to the surface of the body. So if we have two structures that lie, one lies on top of the other, the one that is on top, closer to the surface now, would be described as superficial, and the one that is below, further away from the surface, will be described as deep. And when we reach like the muscles of the forearm and stuff like that, we're going to discuss, well, we're not discussing it today, but throughout the semester, you're going to learn about the superficial muscles of the forearm, the deep muscles of the forearm. And trust me, if you remember these basic principles, you will never have a difficult time learning these muscles. Trust me. Remember, Nathaniel tell you that today, right? Proximal and distal, these are in relation to the origination of a structure. So if a point on a structure is closer to the origin than another, we will refer to it as the proximal portion of that structure. If this portion now is further away from the origination of the structure, we refer to it as distal. So those terms of location are used to describe the fully developed human body, right?
Nathaniel.
Yes?
Just wait, I don't know if I have time, but is it possible you could draw it? You can draw on the screen?
No, I can't right now.
Okay, because in my head, if you could make like a dot in the center, and then say above that dot superior, below that dot inferior, away from the dot lateral, towards that medial, things like that, because somebody just asked me about superficial versus superior.
Okay.
So then can get the visual too.
Yeah, but I can't really draw on the screen right now though. But if you have a question, ask me now, because I think I'd be able to explain that properly. So what did the person ask you?
They asked the difference between this, or they asked rather if the superficial was the same as superior. So clarify that, and yeah.
Superficial is not the same as superior, right? As I said, superficial now is in relation to the surface of the body, while superior now is in relation to the head region of the body. So if a part of the body is closer to the head, we would describe it as superior. Whereas superficial now could be any part of the body, but once it is closer to the skin, which is the surface of the body, we describe it as superficial than the structure which is deep to it, right? So whoever asked that question, is that clear?
Yeah, man, they get it now. Bless.
All right, brilliant. All right, moving along. As I said, those terms of location are used to describe the fully developed human body, right? But we also have embryological terms of location. So these terms, such as cephalic, cranial, cephalad, all of those terms now are utilized to describe areas on the embryo, areas in embryological development that are closer to the head of the embryo than other regions, right? So when they talk about the foregut in relation to the midgut and all of those structures that you will learn throughout the semester or the academic year, cranial would be used to describe structures that are closer to the head, right? Now, caudal is the opposite of cranial. So if you have a structure that is closer to the tail region, as you can see right here in this image, if you have a structure that is closer to this tail region down here, it would be described as caudal, as opposed to cephalic, which is closer to the head. I realize I wasn't using the image to show, all right? So ventral now. Ventral is comparable to anterior, right? So anterior, the ventral section now would relate to the front or the anterior aspect of the embryo. So any structure that would be related here to the front region of the embryo, we describe it as ventral, all right? Now, dorsal would be the opposite of ventral now, and it is utilized to describe the posterior regions of the embryo. Now, anatomical terms of movement. There are a lot of anatomical terms of movement, but I really want Brandon to get into his segment, so I'm just going to describe a few of them to you tonight. All right? Anatomical terms of movement. So we have a few terms right here. The first term of movement I'm going to describe to you is abduction, right? Remember, I described what the midline is earlier, right? Midline is this vertical line right down the middle, separating your body into a left and a right half, right? That's a midline. Abduction now is the movement of a part of the body away from the midline, right? How my tutors in the US last year helped me to remember this is to look at the second and third letters in the word abduction, right? If we look at the vertical part of the B and the vertical part of the D, they are going in two different directions, right? The vertical part of the B is moving away from the D, and therefore abduction now would mean moving away from the midline. As opposed to adduction now, this vertical part of the D is moving towards the vertical part of this D. Therefore, adduction now would mean movement towards the midline. Yes, it's very interesting, very. Abduction, yeah? Okay. Yeah, that's another way to think about it, Jeremiah. Jada Phillip, you raise your hand. Open
Yeah,
your
so I'm say the way I think of it is, like when you're being abducted, you're being taken away from where you want to be. So,
Exactly.
that's just how I just remember it.
That's another way. That's another brilliant way. Thanks for adding that. So as Jada just said, when you're being abducted, thank God none of you have been abducted, I hope. Yeah, when you're being abducted, you're being taken away from your position, right? So abduction, moving away from the midline. Adduction, the opposite of that, moving towards the midline. So now, rotation. We know rotational movements are three-dimensional movements about a pivot, right? So when we talk about medial rotation, I describe the medial as closer to the midline and lateral as further away from the midline, right? So when we describe medial rotation, you're rotating towards the midline. Say, for example, the pivot right here is this joint in the shoulder. If you are to medially rotate your hand, you would be rotating your arm towards the midline of your body now. So this palm would not be facing forward anymore. It would be facing the body itself, facing the thigh, for example, right? That would be medial rotation. And in order to get back to anatomical position from this medially rotated position, you would have to incorporate lateral rotation now, right? Lateral is further away from the midline. So you'd have to turn back your hand about the pivot, which is the shoulder joint, in order to get back to anatomical position. Is everybody understanding that?
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you for your cooperation. Now, I will be describing these last two, and then we can move into Brandon's segment. All right, so flexion, the most famous of all anatomical movements, because every time somebody talks about flexing your biceps or one of those things, that's a very famous thing, right? Now, flexion is decreasing the angle between two body parts, right? So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you have the forearm, right? And the arm. In order to flex this now, you'd be decreasing, because this would look like a 180 degree, right? About the elbow joint. In order to flex the arm now, in order to flex this elbow joint, you'd be decreasing the angle between the forearm and the arm. And therefore you would utilize flexor muscles like the biceps brachii and the brachialis muscle that you will learn throughout this semester in order to do this action, right? Extension now is the opposite of flexion. Extension serves the purpose of increasing the angle between two body parts. So if your arm is in a flexed position, right? If you use your biceps and you bring your forearm closer to your arm and you want to bring your arm back to anatomical position, remember your hands have to be straight and outstretched in anatomical position. If you want to bring it back to that anatomical position, you would have to extend the elbow joint, right? Increasing the angle from possibly an acute or obtuse angle back to the 180, right? So in the interest of time, I'll be skipping the rest of these so we can move on to Brandon's segment. I hope everybody in here has learned something today. I really hope so. Thank you for you guys' cooperation. I'll now hand over to Brandon Henry. The great Brandon Henry.
Thank you, Nathaniel. So a pleasant afternoon, everybody. As was introduced to you before, my name is Brandon Henry. I'm the Deputy Head of Anatomy for US for the 2022-2023 academic year. And I know it's 6:10 p.m. Everybody tired, everybody have school tomorrow and want to go to bed early and everything. All right. So with that in mind, I'm just going to be really brief. So today I'll be briefly introducing you to the bones of the skull, the foramina, and the cranial nerves, as well as highlighting two bones of the appendicular skeleton, the scapula and the humerus. So I know you guys had your osteology class on Friday. where you had been introduced to the cranium and the axial and appendicular skeleton. So many of what I'll be saying today shouldn't be as foreign to you. It shouldn't sound like Spanish or French or Chinese. It should sound like English, right? All right, lovely. So let's get started. So today we'll be mainly focusing on the bones of the neurocranium, which is the part of the skull that encloses the brain. So the neurocranium comprises of the frontal, parietal, temporal, sphenoid, occipital, and ethmoid bones. It is important to note, however, that the parietal and the temporal bones are paired bones, meaning there's a left and a right temporal bone and a left and a right parietal bone. You can't see it in this diagram right here, but in the next diagram, you'll be able to see it. While the rest...
Brandon,
yes,
move the mouse again. Move the mouse again.
That's Nathaniel controlling the mouse.
Because I'm not sure if it'll move like accurately with the thing.
Are you seeing the mouse, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I can see, but it looked like, from my perspective, it looked like it was on the wrong parts. So I'm not sure if it's something wrong.
It was moving after you say the word.
Oh, yeah, it's a little lag.
Okay, I'll move a little slower. So frontal bone, then the parietal, temporal, sphenoid, occipital, and the ethmoid bone. So as I said, it's important to note, however, that the parietal and temporal bones are paired bones, meaning there's a left and a right temporal and a left and a right parietal bone, while the rest, the sphenoid, occipital, and ethmoid bones are unpaired. So some of the facial bones are depicted on this diagram. For example, the lacrimal, nasal, maxilla, zygomatic bone, all of which are paired bones, and the mandible, also known as the jawbone, which is an unpaired bone. So additionally, on the bottom right of the diagram, you might be saying, okay, there's no way these words are English. It's definitely Chinese, but that's fine. Let's translate it. So essentially, in anatomy, a process is a projection from a structure. So the zygomatic process of the temporal bone is a projection from the temporal bone that will connect with the zygomatic bone, right? While the temporal process of the zygomatic bone is a projection from the zygomatic bone that will connect with the temporal bone. So these two processes form what is known as the zygomatic arch. Then we have the mastoid process. Again, as the name suggests, the mastoid process is a projection or an outgrowth from the mastoid bone. And it serves as an attachment for several muscles, but you don't need to know that right now. Similarly, with the styloid process, it is a projection or outgrowth from the styloid bone. And finally, we'll have the external acoustic meatus. So everyone should be familiar with this as it continues as the ear canal all the way to the eardrum, the tympanic membrane. So next slide. So as I said earlier, we'll be focusing on the bones of the neurocranium, the frontal, temporal, occipital, parietal, sphenoid, and ethmoidal bones. So you might be wondering, what are those squiggly lines between the bones? It's not there for visual pleasantries or any artistic style or anything. They're really important structures that I'll get to in a second. Sutures, I'm seeing people already know what it is. Yes, definitely. But so next slide. So this is a superior view of the skull, meaning we're at a bird's eye view looking down into the skull with the skull cap removed. We can see the ethmoid bone, the sphenoid bone, temporal bone, and occipital bone. Additionally, we can also identify the frontal bone. It's not labeled right there, but it's that light blue area that's where the ethmoid bone is resting in. We can identify the parietal bone, which is that light green area right there. Okay, next slide. So now here are the squiggly lines I mentioned earlier. So these are called sutures. So sutures are fibrous joints that connect the bones of the skull. So the frontal bone articulates with the parietal bone at the coronal suture. Remember when Nathaniel was explaining the different planes, as the name suggests, the coronal suture would divide the skull into an anterior and a posterior segment. So it's an easy way to remember the name of that suture. The parietal bones articulate with each other medially. Remember, medial means towards the midline of the body, at the sagittal suture, and posteriorly, remember what posteriorly means? Towards the back, with the occipital bone at the two lambdoid sutures. So we have a sagittal suture running down the midline of the skull, and posteriorly to the sagittal suture, where the most where Nathaniel is pointing the most, those are what is called the lambdoid sutures. And we have two of those. Then the two temporal bones articulate with their respective parietal bones and the occipital bones at the squamous suture. We can't see it in this diagram, but we should be able to see it in the next diagram. Right there. So again, the temporal bone articulates, because remember there's two temporal bones. There's going to be a left temporal bone and a right temporal bone. So the two temporal bones articulate with their respective parietal bones and the occipital bones at the squamous suture. Okay, so now the foramina. So the foramina basically are openings in the skull that allow the passage of various neurovascular structures. And we already know one aspect of the neurovascular structure, which is the cranial nerves. I'm pretty sure you guys learned about the cranial nerves on Friday, right? Did somebody just confirm or deny? Okay, yes, I'm seeing nice. Okay, so just to briefly name the foramina, we have most superiorly the optic canal, lateral to the optic canal. This is why it's important to know the anatomical terminologies, because you always hear these words. So lateral to the optic canal, which means going away from the midline of the body, we have the superior orbital fissure. Posterior to the superior orbital fissure, we have the foramen rotundum. Then laterally to the orbital fissure, so towards the back and away from the midline, from the foramen rotundum, we have the foramen ovale. Even more posterolaterally, we have the foramen spinosum. Medial to the foramen spinosum, we have what is called the carotid canal. And then anteromedially to the carotid canal, we have what is called the foramen lacerum. So it's important to know the anatomical terminologies so you can accurately identify each foramen and accurately understand if a lecturer is explaining to you the positions, things like that, to be able to accurately understand what they're talking about, what they mean. So we'll soon discuss what nerves pass through each of these foramina. So next slide. So then we have the internal acoustic meatus. Posteromedially to that, we have the jugular foramen. And then we have a small canal called the hypoglossal canal. And finally, you might be wondering, what's that large hole in the skull? You can go to the next slide. That is called the foramen magnum. And that is where the spinal cord would travel through after exiting as the medulla oblongata. So that's where the spinal cord will travel through. So before we move to the next slide now, here's the fun part. I want to see which bright student can answer this next question. And the prize is I will buy you lunch, Chinese lunch from Taurus Garden. So the first person to type the correct response in the chat will get a free lunch. Okay, yes. So ready? 3, 2, 1. Next slide. Wait, next slide. Find the slide with the question. And Kale got it correct. That is the optic canal. So Kale Thomas, I owe you a free lunch from Taurus Garden. Lovely.
I want to buy somebody a lunch too. So ask them B too.
Okay, Nathaniel is going to buy somebody else a lunch. So who can identify Pro B? First person to type it in the chat. Okay, Kale, you can't get 2 lunch in a Kale.
Can't get 2 lunch, Kale.
Forum rotundum.
Who's that?
Shade, Brathwaite.
No, Shade, that's a good try.
Seeing Christoph Rose said spinosum in
Christoph
the chat.
Rose?
Yes.
Yeah, almost one naturally.
So, Kayla and Christoph, I have 2 lunch for you. I keep that in mind. All right, you can go to the previous slide.
Brandon, you want to go back to that side and identify the rest of the foramina?
I mean, in the interest of time, I want to go to the cranial nerves too.
I think Brandon described them earlier still.
Yeah, we pointed them out.
So,
all right, fair.
Somebody asking? Is somebody asking?
No, but like just to differentiate the spinosum there versus rotundum, especially since somebody got it wrong.
Okay, I'll just do that one then. Just do that differentiation. All right, fine. So you can go back and
I should have just my glasses.
Your glasses? You just put on your glasses?
I'm gonna do that in the exam, you know.
Make sure you carry it to the exam for you. All right, good.
So that one in where Pro B is in, that would be foramen spinosum. And the one anteromedial to that, that would be ovale. I'm just going through those two right now because we have to go through the cranial nerves and some other stuff. So you can go to the previous slide. Okay, yes. So there are 12 cranial nerves, and as you guys said, you've learned them already. And you're expected to know each of them and the foramina through which they travel through. So now don't panic. I have an easy way to remember the 12 cranial nerves. And this picture is an excellent picture to screenshot and keep for revision. So let's take a screenshot of this and keep it somewhere safe. So for some reason, we tend to remember sayings that are explicit and inappropriate. And if it's that what will help us to remember, then by all means, employ that. Use that way to remember. So I have a mnemonic here that says, O, to touch and feel virgin girl's vagina and hymen. So the first O would stand for olfactory. Second O would stand for optic. Third O would stand for oculomotor. The fourth letter in the T would be trochlear. Touch would be trigeminal. A would be abducens. F would be, or feel would be facial. Virgin would be vestibulocochlear. G would be, in girls, would be glossopharyngeal. V in vagina would be vagus. And, or A in and would be accessory. H in hymen would be hypoglossal. So keep that mnemonic in mind. Still use that mnemonic to this day to help me remember the cranial nerves. So O, to touch and feel virgin girl's vagina and hymen. Now, to remember the foramina in which they travel through, for me, I just had to sit down and study this. I don't know of an easier way to remember this, but I just sat down and just, you can say swat it in a sense, but swatting is not really good, but that's just the way how I studied for this. So the olfactory nerves would be traveling through, you have something to say, Jeremiah?
Let me make a couple ways because honestly, this was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make a couple ways. I don't think you want to go through all the details of that though, but like the rosy and mnemonic help because you have to know the order of the foraminas because the nerves are passing through them in that same order.
Exactly.
And like for instance, the superior orbital fissure means that fissure is taking all of the nerves going to the eye. And if you follow that fissure to the anterior side of the skull, you can see that it actually passes through the eye. It's sending the optic nerve and it's sending the other 4 nerves for motor of the eye. And then you know the olfactory. But yes, what it like it.
All right, Jeremiah, those techniques, we're going to impart them to all of our US tutors in our workshop session. So we can then bring forward this information to all of you guys. If we don't come to US on Thursdays, you're not gonna miss out on this critical information. All right. So make sure everybody shows up, and Jeremiah and other tutors like me and Brandon will relay this information to you, and you will never forget it. All right. So you can continue now, Brandon.
Yeah. So traveling through the cribriform plates, we have the olfactory nerve. Through the optic canal, we have as the name suggests, optic nerve. Traveling through the superior orbital fissure, we have cranial nerve 3, cranial nerve 4, the first branch of cranial nerve 5, and cranial nerve 6. You might be wondering what's the first branch of cranial nerve 5. Cranial nerve 5 has three branches. So cranial nerve 5 is a trigeminal branch. It has 3 branches. The first branch is the ophthalmic nerve, second branch, maxillary nerve, third branch, mandibular nerve. So the first branch, which is the ophthalmic nerve, travels through the superior orbital fissure. Going a bit fast, yes, but as we said, US, we'll go through all of this in detail. Then traveling through the foramen rotundum, we have the second branch of the trigeminal nerve, the maxillary nerve, and then foramen ovale, traveling through that, we have the third branch, which is the mandibular nerve. Then foramen spinosum, we have the meningeal branch of the mandibular nerve. So you see the branches can have further branches. So we said the third branch of the trigeminal nerve was the mandibular nerve. So the meningeal branch of that mandibular nerve travels through the foramen spinosum. Then we'll have traveling through the internal acoustic meatus. We have cranial nerve 7 and cranial nerve 8, facial and vestibulocochlear. Traveling through the jugular foramen, we'll have cranial nerve 9, 10, and 11. And then finally, through the hypoglossal canal, we have the hypoglossal nerve. You can go to the next slide. So another thing you're going to need to remember about the cranial nerves is whether they provide sensory, motor innervation, or both. So again, we have another mnemonic. Mnemonics always help in anatomy. So this one says, some say marry money, but my bride says big brain matter more. Big brains matter more. So the S is for sensory, the M is for motor, and the B is for both sensory and motor. And those Roman numerals indicate which cranial nerve we're talking about. So cranial nerve 1, which said was olfactory, would only provide sensory innervation. Cranial nerve 3, which is oculomotor, would provide motor innervation, as the name suggests. And cranial nerve 5, trigeminal, would provide both sensory and motor innervation. Okay, yeah, next slide. And then here we'll have another wonderful diagram showing all the cranial nerves and their innervations. And I'm stressing you, take a screenshot of this picture. Keep this picture somewhere safe. I still use this picture up to this day to help me revise and to help me study for my courses, because we use this in digestive anatomy and things like that. So I'm stressing you, take a screenshot of this and keep this picture somewhere safe. I'm not going to go through it right now because of time. So again, yeah. So next slide. Yeah, so that was a segment of the axial skeleton. We looked at the skull. So now to quickly introduce you to 2 segments of the appendicular skeleton, the scapula and the humerus. Go to the next slide. Next slide after that too. So the scapula articulates with the humerus at what is called the glenohumeral joint, and it articulates with the clavicle at the acromioclavicular joint. So the scapula has 2 surfaces. It has an anterior surface, which is what we're seeing in the left diagram, and a posterior surface, which is what we're seeing in the right diagram. It has 3 borders. It has a medial border, so meaning that part would be closer to the midline of the body. It has a lateral border, meaning that part will be further away from the midline of the body. And it has a superior border, so that border will be closer to the head. It has 3 angles. It has an inferior angle, a superior angle, and a lateral angle, which can be seen on the posterior aspect of the scapula. It has 3 fossae. So the anterior surface, we have the subscapular fossa, which is that big depression. So fossa in anatomy is a depression or a cavity that will receive the insertion or the origin of a muscle. So right here would be the origin of this muscle called the subscapularis. We'll get into details in that further on. So that's the subscapular fossa. And on the posterior surface, the posterior aspect of the scapula, we have 2 fossae. We have the supraspinous fossae and the infraspinous fossae. So these fossae are named in relation to the spine of the scapula. So above that spine of the scapula, we have the supraspinous. Supra means above, so above the spine, spinous, supraspinous fossa, and infraspinous. Infra means below, spinous, spine. So infraspinous fossa. And those would be the origin of these 2 muscles that I'm just naming right now, the infraspinatus and the supraspinatus. We have 3 processes, 2 processes actually. As I said, a process is more like a projection from a structure. So we have what is called the coracoid process, which is seen on both the anterior and posterior aspect of the scapula, and the acromion or acromion process. And again, those receive the insertion or an origin of various ligaments and muscles and things like that, but we're not getting into that right now. And the other bone that I'll be introducing you to is the humerus. So now for the humerus, we saw a cavity. Wait, go back a second, Anthony. Yes, so on the anterior aspect of the scapula towards the lateral aspect, we have what is called the glenoid cavity. So the head of the humerus would articulate into that glenoid cavity. So you can go to the next slide. As you can see right there. So that head of the humerus would articulate, it would connect or join the scapula in that cavity. So we have the head of the humerus, and the humerus has two necks. It has an anatomical neck and a surgical neck. You will learn the importance of these later on. We have two bumps, I'd like to call it, known as the lesser and greater tuberosity. And those receive the insertion, as I mentioned muscles earlier, the subscapularis, the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus. So those will receive the insertion of those muscles. And between those two bumps, we have what is called the intertubercular groove, which is an important groove that can't get into details right now, but eventually further on in the US lectures, we'll definitely get into the significance. And traveling down the shaft of the humerus, we have on either side of that groove, we have what is called the greater and lesser crest of tuberosity, or I like to call it the medial lip, right there, and the lateral lip of the intertubercular sulcus. Those lips are two very important lips because they receive the insertion of two very important muscles. Okay, so going more distal now to the humerus. Again, you're not going to meet upon this distal humerus until like closer to the middle of the semester, but just to familiarize you with the terminologies, we have what is called the anteromedial surface. You have the anterolateral surface. We have the lateral supracondylar ridge. We have the radial fossa. We have the capitellum. We have the trochlea. We have the medial epicondyle. We have the lateral epicondyle. We have the medial supracondylar ridge. We have the lateral supracondylar ridge. And we have the coronoid fossa. So on the posterior aspect of the humerus, we have an important structure which is known as the radial groove. And through that groove, you're going to learn an important nerve. The radial nerve travels through that groove. And another important artery, the profunda brachii artery, travels through that groove. But as I said, just a brief introduction of the skull and the two bones of the appendicular skeleton. We have much more to discuss in depth. I'm excited to meet all who have registered for US. And if this is your first time hearing about US, I'm encouraging you to sign up. If you want a guaranteed A+, listen, let me tell you this. If you want a guaranteed A+ in your anatomy exam, do yourself the favor and sign up. Sign up. You will be getting spotters for your final exams, as my colleagues were previously explaining. I'm telling you, US will be the best exposure to the cadavers. Somebody has a question? Somebody's mic open? Teresa?
No, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. But yes, guys, I was saying, yes, sign up for US. You're asking how to sign up for US? Okay, Nathaniel, you want to give them your number? Nathaniel? All right, guys, you can take my number and message me. That's my number. Take my number down. Message me your name, email address, and things like that, and message me what program you're doing, and keep you guys registered.
I just got lost on my laptop. Sorry, guys. I will send my number in the group chat. Also, you can message me or Brandon, whichever you feel comfortable messaging.
Or actually, Teresa just sent the link in the chat. Thank you very much for that. I didn't have that already.
Oh, brilliant.
Excellent. So yes, guys, you can click that link, register. The US lectures will be face-to-face. So on a Thursday from 2 to 4, we'll be in the anatomy lab on the med building. Split you guys up into the group, into the smallest focus group. We have, I think, 40 other tutors ready and excited to teach you guys. So yeah, are they starting this week? No, they're not starting this week. They're supposed to be starting next week. So not this week, coming next week. Is it only for Mona? Right now, the plan is to have full face-to-face, but we're trying to see if we can have a bit of a hybrid type of thing to facilitate anybody else. who can't make it. But the plan is for right now is to be full face-to-face. But anything you have anything else to say?
Not much. But once again, thanks to everybody for coming out today. I know that we kind of took a while to deliver everything, but I'm pretty sure everything that was said to you today will be of great importance throughout the semester and will help you guys navigate very easily. All right. So thanks again, everybody, for coming. Thanks for sitting and listening. I hope you learned from me and the great Brandon Henry.
Oh, wait, one more thing. Yes, Jeremiah said that Hypo has online anatomy. So this is the first year that Hypo will be offering an extra anatomy tutor sessions. So myself and Mark Anthony will actually be tutoring you guys for that, and that will be online. So if you can't make it to the US sessions, if you're not from Mona, or if you're from another campus or anything like that, you can join the Hypo sessions. So myself and Mark Anthony Davis will be conducting that.
All right. Thanks again for coming, guys. I don't know if Simon is still here and wants to say anything, or we should wrap up. Simon, are you here? You're welcome, guys.
I think Simon
You're
gone.
welcome. Kayla, you're welcome. Natalia, I hope I pronounced your name properly.
Yes, guys, so your next week should be your first proper week of school. This week that just gone was a nice little introduction to everything. But this week is where the work begins. Remember, you can always reach out to any one of us. You can reach out to me, Nathaniel, Jeremiah, Mark, Simon, anybody. We're here to help you guys. Remember, if you haven't signed up for the Med Sibling program, sign up for the Med Sibling program. You're going to need some advice. You're going to need somebody to talk to and make friends, form study groups, things like that. And try to find, all right, one principle I live by, and I still live by that, is don't make med school your life. So med school should not be your life. You should incorporate med school into your life. So you should have a life that already exists outside of med school, if you get what I'm saying, and then try to fit med school into that life. It's going to be a major segment, a major aspect of your life, yes, but at the end of the day, you still have to make sure that you're, mentally sound. You're still enjoying what you used to enjoy before med school and things like that.
That is it, bro. That is definitely it. All right, so I think we can call this meeting concluded. Thank you guys for all the compliments in the chat. You guys made it priceless as well.
Definitely. Come to US, guys. Come to US, please.
Don't forget.
Get some rest. Get some rest.
Let's go to school tomorrow, 8 a.m.
8 o'clock bedtime. I don't want to hear so nobody's up past 8 o'clock tonight.
Exactly.
All who on the phone calling them girlfriend and boyfriend, lock it off tonight.
You are in the live stream.
Oh, that's crazy. Doesn't matter, a little fun,
Teresa, you're asking where it would be held? It would be held in the anatomy labs, yeah, on the med building.
All right, later, everybody.
But don't forget to give out the textbook. You might hear back from Devon regarding that.
And when you come cash in on a lunch, remember me.
So Kale and Christoph message me and sort out the lunch thing.
No, you can't bring snacks into the
you
lab.
can't bring snacks into the anatomy lab.
Make sure you full belly from lunchtime.
It's going to be right after lunchtime, so everybody should be good. And don't catch the niggeritis, because we're here to learn.
You see me? We want participation. All right. So thanks everybody for coming out. We can call it a good session right now.
All right, listen.
Bye.